Kim Burrell, she is a force in the gospel music industry. She went viral recently for some comments about everybody from people who wear a mask to the way people look to people who may not be as wealthy as her. It was very interesting. Listen to this. All right. So Kim Burrell has apologized. She released an apology. She said this, quote, as a kingdom citizen and a woman of integrity, I can acknowledge that some of my words, even if I said in jest, can be offensive. My intention is to never hurt anyone, but to spread love, laughter, and more importantly, the gift which God has given me in song. If anyone was offended, I can sincerely say, I apologize, unquote. She also threatened legal action against her critics for quote unquote slandering and defaming her character. She released a long statement saying that my image has been used in multiple places and false statements and narratives have been created. The punitive damages are for some are quite lofty. Please be mindful of what is both written and said in video about me, especially if it contains untruths, slander, and defamation. She goes on and on. Interesting. Couple things here. How was a sermon like that Christ-like, God-like, loving? The three most important words in the Bible to me, God is love. And in my opinion, my alleged opinion, there have been other situations from Kim Burrell that don't really feel much like love. And this is a woman who reportedly is, wealthy and does well for herself, according to her. She's, her fee isn't as high as one might think. It just takes me to the capitalism, the profit, and sometimes the harm of church. Not all the time, but sometimes. This is somebody who was valorized. This is somebody who was seen as a leader, not by me, but by other people. And to make the comment about not wearing a mask and not being vaccinated and celebrating that, especially when I heard Drew McCaskill saying this yesterday on Karen Hunter's show, considering how Black people were disproportionately and still are impacted by COVID-19. Are these our leaders? Are these our faith leaders? Are these our church leaders? And I've covered plenty of folks in churches, not just Black folks, where I look to it and I say, for our church folks out there, are these our leaders? People who allegedly turn folks away in Texas during a hurricane when they have millions of dollars. Are these our people who ask for donations for a private jet? Are these our leaders in faith? When I think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he wasn't a wealthy man. He wasn't a wealthy man at all. When I think about our previous church leaders, these aren't folks who are profiting in the same kind of way. So that kind of ugliness and the celebration she got for those comments, disturbing. I mean, she was sounding like she was Joan Rivers or something, like she was an insult comedian. And then that final line in her apology, if anyone was offended, I can sincerely say I apologize if anyone was offended. So these are our churches, and the Black church is the backbone of so much of our history. It was really disappointing to me. Amisha?
Clay, there's a reason why millennials and this next generation have left the church largely. And part of that is because of speeches like that are not only ignorant, but it sounded like more like a Netflix stand-up than it sounded anything like it was sermon or religious related at all. But Kim Burrell, this is not her first rodeo with being a jackass. This is the same woman who said perverted sexual spirit repeatedly and threw the LGBT community under the bus at every given chance she possibly could. This is a woman who's made fun of people's appearances regularly, which is hilarious to me because Kim Burrell ain't missed not a single meal. And this is a woman who also takes issue with the poor. And I get, prosperity gospel, white people basically weaponized it. They made billions off of it, billions in some cases. Many across Black churches have decided that that's what they're going to do as well. And in so doing, consider it sinful for you to be poor, or you did something to create poverty for yourself, and that you should disassociate as an individual with anybody who may be poor because the poor can rub off on you. These are individuals who are extremely problematic because not only are they not preaching from the Bible, last time I checked, Jesus sat with the poor. He rocked with the poor. He
He
fed
was
the poor.
against
He
capitalism.
washed people's
Christ.
feet. He himself did
Yes.
not come here and walk into riches. He didn't come here as a king. So to hear from someone like Kim Burrell, who has her own many fault lines, and that was a half-ass apology. If I offended some people, anytime you start an apology with if, and you're not taking responsibility for exactly what you said and whom you offended in the process, you might as well have saved that apology. And now threatening those who have spoken out against her rhetoric, which is extremely dangerous, which to your point, Clay, got a lot of applause in the sanctuary she spoke in, which shows us something else about, not only the people of that church, but also the audience that she has cultivated over time. These are types of conversations that you would expect from crazies, not the types of conversations you expect from somebody that's supposed to be cloaked in the lambskin, cloaked in the wool of God. What we're hearing from her is extreme negativity. Again, it sounded like a Netflix stand-up. She literally castigated the poor. She made fun of people's appearances. She has a long list of history of making fun of the LGBT community. She is somebody who doesn't deserve the platform that she has, in the sense that she is speaking on behalf of the word. There is no word in that.
Well said. And the other thing, I'm not sure which state she was in when she did her pseudo stand-up special, but what is Kim Burrell doing? I mean, what do you do if you're this kind of spokesperson? What are you doing for voting rights? What are you doing for the Black maternal mortality crisis? I mean, there are so many other platforms that you could take. And I will say this, I'm not someone who goes to church every Sunday, but I do believe we need our churches. I believe we need Black churches. We had to look to the root of Black churches being an escape for enslaved people, being the beginnings of the freedom conventions post the Civil War, mapping out a Black agenda before that term even existed, about how Black people can live free from white terror, about Black people building their own schools. Many Black schools began in Black churches. I think about the beginnings of the civil rights movement. Black churches, we need these churches. And so I just want to know, Miss Burrell, what are you doing? What are you doing? Whatever state you're in, what are you doing? Especially if that sermon took place in the South. How are you really serving? In what ways are you serving? I don't know, maybe she is on the front lines of voting rights. I'll be clear with you. Bernice King, Dr. King's daughter, has made some really problematic comments, but Bernice, two things can exist. Bernice King has been on the front lines in Georgia for voting rights. She speaks out when she sees injustice. Do I agree with everything that she said? No, I don't. But she certainly, from what I see, has been doing some kind of work, versus someone like Kim Burrell up there bragging about her riches. I mean, that's appear, in my humble opinion,
And making
it's just
fun of people who had to get government assistance during the pandemic. And to your point
right.
earlier, also making fun of those who were wearing masks and trying to protect themselves. Because let's be real, again, I think you already stated, Black people were the most harmed, as we are with almost every health crisis America has ever seen, because of lack of access to healthcare, because of food deserts, because of 5,000 different things that we're more susceptible to. The effects of COVID-19 ravaged the Black community in ways that we did not see equally in other communities. So telling a Black audience, oh, well, proud to be without these masks, this, that, and other thing, when those were part of a singular protection process, when we didn't have vaccines, when we didn't have other things. And now, even with the vaccines, we find that, with all the different variants that have since come out, that mask is still one of the most frontline essential things you could possibly have to avoid not only getting sick yourself, but also spreading it. And as somebody who has now had COVID twice, despite being vaccinated and boosted, I stand on that 100%.
And let's be clear, Amisha, part of the reason why COVID-19 continued to mutate is because so many people refuse to get the vaccine. Imagine if when polio was ravaging the world, if all these people said, I'm not getting the polio vaccine, polio would have continued, it would have gotten worse. But that's part of the reason why the virus continues to be so insidious, is because so many people refuse to get it, and it mutates. Viruses are smart, it mutates. So for her to put, and almost making it, this is just my opinion, almost making it seem like if you got the vaccine, if you're wearing a mask, that you aren't walking with God. That was my interpretation, my opinion, my first.
It is literally the same thing Southern Baptist white pastors did during the entire COVID, the COVID rise of 2020 and 2021. Like that is what pastors in Southern Baptist churches in Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama were telling their congregations. Meanwhile, the seniors in those congregations were filling up the hospitals, many of them dying. So there is no difference, except she's a Black woman saying it, than there is a rabid racist white man in the South who happens to be a leader of a church who is saying the same thing to his congregation and marching them to their deaths.
Yeah, really disappointing language. And I think that, listen, we have to hold our elected officials accountable, and we have to hold our churches accountable as well. That is crucial. We have to say, wait a minute, that is unacceptable. Wait a minute, you're not going to profit off of us as you're insulting us to our face. Insulting us to our face. What if there was somebody in there who was wearing a mask? Do they feel pressure to take it off? We really have to be able to hold our churches accountable. And yeah, but maybe she's in a privileged, wealthy bubble, and maybe she's immune from being held accountable, like some white evangelicals are. So I guess evangelicalism has a thread. I guess it does. Let's go to a couple calls here. Let's go to Kevin, Virginia, first-time caller.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing great. What's up?
Good. Hey, Clay and Amisha, I'm glad to be able to come on. So you were mentioning that what state she was from. I mean, when she was doing her shade, it was
Yes.
In North Carolina.
Wow. North Carolina.
And this is the thing. She had one job to do, and that was to sing. So all that other stuff she was doing was unnecessary. She was there to sing. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Kevin. And, North Carolina, even before Trump, when Obama won North Carolina, his first term, immediately after that, they began pushing in voter suppression laws in North Carolina. They said, oh, hell no, that's not going to happen again. So the fact that she said that in North Carolina, considering the issues that's happening in North Carolina when it comes to gentrification, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to voting rights, worrying about PPP loans, CRT campaigns. That is the